Píchame. I briefly wanted to check with the speakers of the plenary session if they are online already, so we can do a mic and camera check. So Secretary General Bumi Sakoma, are you online already?
background. But the line in the sand that we have drawn, we take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us create a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
corners of this continent. Welcome to this exciting advocacy dialogue, accelerating SDG 5, eliminating gender-based violence in East and Central Africa. It is exciting to be with all of you here today, and we are really, really excited to have all of you joining us today. And as of now, I think we are almost 73 participants joining us from across the continent, and especially from East and Central Africa countries. To facilitate this conversation today, on behalf of all member partners co-hosting this session today, I'll be your moderator. My name is Mwanhamisi Salim Singano, and I serve as Femnet Heads of Program, and today I will moderate this session. So kindly join me to be part of this exciting, but as well as inspiring session. This dialogue is part of the series of dialogue that has been hosted by different partners and co-led by UNFPA with other partners. And this dialogue, as I said, is part of the broader dialogue, and it serves two specific functions, or it has two main objectives, and I'm sure that the regional director will speak more about that. But just to give you an idea that why we are here today, we're here today because, one, we want to identify key advocacy messages, and also to have concrete actions to support East Africa and East and Southern Africa member states to achieve SDG 3, but also SDG 5.4. But also we want to reflect on existing multi-stakeholder platform on gender-based violence and ways to better connect efforts across the East and Southern Africa region. So those are the two main reasons why we are here today. And I would really, again, wish to welcome all of you joining us. And before we get started, allow me to then run you through some key housekeeping rules or item in that manner. One, to allow a smooth facilitation, especially on the breakout groups, we'll advise all of you to kindly rename yourself the way you have registered. And that includes, for example, putting your first name first and then the second name, the way you have registered for this session. And that will help our support team to be able to allocate you in specific group as indicated. So that one. Two, today's meeting, we have translations. This meeting will be translated in French and in Portuguese as well. So kindly select the language of your choice to be able to fully engage in the conversation. To do that, there is a world icon below your screen. If you click that world icon below your screen, you will be able to select the language of your choice. Third, I would like to also encourage you and inspire you to mute your mic for all time that you will not be speaking. And that will allow us to effectively communicate. But also, I would like to also encourage, if you are not speaking, kindly turn off your video so that to allow or to enhance the quality of this broadcast as well. So we'd only like to see the videos for those who will be speaking, and for those who are not speaking, kindly turn off your video. Feel free to use the chat function as much as you like. And as a starter, we really like to invite you to use the chat to introduce yourself, your name, the organization that we work with, and the country that you're coming from, or the country that you were working in. And last, but very important, kindly be reminded that this is the safe space, and we invite all of you to collectively making this space safer for all of us. That being said, I would now like to welcome Jody Tewali, the UNFPA Regional Director, to officially welcome all of us in this dialogue. Jody, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, moderator Mishi. And just before I start, I guess I'm the acting regional director, and then the Julita currently is in New York, at our headquarters. But a very good morning to each one of you, and a big thank you to each one of you for taking out time for this important conversation. Esteemed partners, friends, and colleagues, allow me to say all protocol observed. As the moderator pointed out, today we all are here to have a conversation on accelerating efforts towards Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality. In particular, we will be focusing on gender-based violence, violence against women and girls, to complete the unfinished dream of the ICPD Program of Action and the Beijing Platform for Action. As you all know, UNFPA is one of our key goals. We believe that women's ability to make autonomous, informed decisions about her life and body, to live a life free of any form of discrimination and violence, is central to her realization and enjoyment of human rights. I don't have to repeat it, but as we know, globally, as well as in our region, the prevalence of GBV is extremely high. 1 in 3 women experience physical and sexual violence during her lifetime. Therefore, we are in a state of emergency when it comes to GBV. And the COVID-19 pandemic had further worsened this situation. Now we have reliable and valid data that women exposure to violence during the pandemic has increased significantly. In fact, it has gone up by 30%. Multiple forms of gender-based violence are being experienced during this time, including domestic violence, survival sex, child marriages, FGM. Dear partner, the timing of this conversation is very important. We are entering the second year of the 2019 ICPD 25 Nairobi Summit. Many of you were there at the time of the summit. Ending gender-based violence and harmful practices was identified as one of the top priorities to accelerate progress towards universal SRHR at this summit. Also, at the end of this month, we will have a Generation Equality Forum in Paris. Many of you might be there. And as you know, UNFPA co-leads the Generation Equality Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR. UNFPA jointly with UN Women, Femnet, and others, including many of you, have identified at least 5 critical action areas to address GBV. Allow me to very briefly touch on those areas. Your views will be extremely important, not only to refine these areas, but also to identify new ones. The first action area is to strengthen delivery of multi-sectoral services to women and girls, as women and girls are disproportionately affected by GBV. In particular, we need to focus on young women and girls with disabilities, women and girls living with HIV and AIDS, as well as women and girls living in poverty. The second action area is to facilitate gender-responsive legislation and policies that effectively protect women and girls. Equally important, the need to address the financing and implementation gap. a lot needs to be done to address legal barriers to the utilization of SRH services, to address marital rape. Marital rape is not a crime in more than half of African countries as we speak. The third action area is to identify and strengthen the key determinants of women and girls' bodily autonomy. The latest UNAFP data shows that around half of girls and women make their decisions about their bodies without fear of violence or coercion, which means decisions and choices of half of women and girls are governed by others. This is quite unacceptable. The fourth area of action is the need to expand the availability, accessibility, and affordability of quality integrated GBV services. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the importance of making GBV response and prevention mechanism core elements of essential delivery system by integrating GBV into broader health, police, justice, as well as social services. The fifth and the final area of action is to ensure effective prevention and response to GBV in humanitarian settings. We all know sexual and physical violence increase significantly during emergency, conflict, and fragile settings. At the same time, women and girls experience challenges in accessing health, social welfare, and justice services in this setting. Currently, in Cabo Delgado, in Mozambique, UNFPA is supporting the government to ensure continuity of life-saving health and SRH services, including prevention of and response to GBV. Similarly, in Tigray, Ethiopia, where reports of sexual violence continue to surface, UN agencies are scaling up support to safe houses and one-stop center to provide immediate medical and psychosocial care. Friends, this conversation is extremely important to figure out ways to effectively implement these actions which we have jointly identified with many of you, as well as other actions for attaining zero GBV by 2030. I welcome you all again. Look forward to learning from each one of you. Thank you for your kind attention. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yodi, for the powerful presentation, but also for connecting the journey from ICPD to now generation equality. And as you have said, a lot has been done so far. The articulation of priority area, the blueprint, and now it's time to make a commitment and reaffirm. And I agree with you, this conversation can never be more timely than it is right now. So thank you so much for the welcoming remark, but also for getting us, for creating a bigger picture of the conversation. So with that, I would now like to welcome all the participants to share your aspiration for the African woman, to share your aspiration. We have a Mentimeter link has been shared in the chat, and if the technical team will allow or will help us by sharing that screen as well in the guidance on how we can, all participants can contribute and be part of that. So you are guided to use either the link on the chat, or if you have your phone, kindly use the link below and use the passcode as indicated on your screen, and you will be able to share with us your wish for women in East and Southern Africa. Would like to, we are waiting to read your wishes for the women in East and Central Africa. So kindly take a minute to click on the link, and as well to use the passcode indicated, and the passcode is 2623857 6. That's the passcode, and you will be able to connect and share your wish for women in East and Central Africa, and your response will be popping up on the screen as they're coming in. So kindly take a minute to do so. We wish, yes, the response have been coming in. We are seeing empowered. We wish to see women in East and Southern Africa being empowered. We wish to see them live free from violence and free from violence. Bodily autonomy is coming in. We wish to see women in Africa thriving. I like that. We really need to move from surviving to thriving. And we wish to see free from violence again, and bodily autonomy, life in dignity, healthy African, healthy East and Southern African women. Yes, empowered again, coming up. Thank you very much. So please keep on responding to those. To the question, kindly share your inspiration, and that will guide us in our conversation today, and we'll hold each other accountable on how we can achieve those aspirations and how we can have plan and action that at the end of the day ensure that women in East and Southern Africa are thriving, are empowered, are healthy, living life of dignity, etc. That being said, so thank you so much for those who have joined us to take that action. I would now like to move to the second section of this meeting, and this section will be setting a stage. Apologies for small technical hurdle. So in this session, we'll be setting a stage for our conversation today as the responses are still coming in. And I would now like to introduce our 3 speakers who will be sharing with us insights, technical insights to help guide our conversation today. And to do that, we will have, as I said, 3 speakers, and every speakers, I will give every speaker 10 minutes to share with us their insight and technical and professional opinion on the topic. So to start with today, I would like to welcome Ms. Boemo Sekomo. Ms. Boemo Madu Sekomo is the Secretary General of SADC Parliamentary Forum, an apex organization established within the institutional framework of SADC, vested with enormous responsibility towards the region. Ms. Sekomo, kindly take the floor and share with us your presentation. You have 10 minutes. Ms. Sekomo?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Hello? Oh,
hello.
Okay. Yes, good morning, and thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'll share my presentation from this end. Just kindly give me an opportunity to do so. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, we are.
Hello?
I can confirm on behalf of all of us that yes, you can see your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. And greetings to all advocates, feminists, gender activists, and survivors of gender-based violence. Indeed, we do have unfinished business from the ICPD program of action. My presentation was basically to share what the SADC Parliamentary Forum is and what we're doing about gender-based violence. As you've already heard, the SADC Parliamentary Forum is a regional organization, is an apex interparliamentary body based in Southern Africa. We bring together SADC member states, parliaments, and we were established in August 1997 as an institution of SADC by virtue of Article 9.2 of the SADC Treaty. During what we refer to as a plenary session, in between we have standing committees, meetings, and trainings to ensure we are nominated to the SADC Parliamentary Forum with issues of concern in the region, with strategies of how they can maximize and be able to take advantage of their mandated roles, which I believe all of you are aware of. We also have a standing committee dedicated to leading on issues of gender equality, women advancement, youth development, and we also have what we refer to as an organ, which is the Regional Women's Parliamentary Caucus. It regroups all SADC women members of Parliament for them to create a platform to canvass on issues of regional concern, to canvass on issues which are of regional and national importance regarding gender. It may be youth, it may be any other issue of concern, among others. We've been actively involved over the years with national parliaments regarding the lawmaking function of members of parliament. While we are not yet a parliament, we dedicate a lot of time to what we refer to as normative framework for ensuring that we assist members of parliament in their role for lawmaking. You will notice, or most of you who follow the legislative calendar of parliaments, you will notice that on average, and this is average, it differs from country to country, you'd find that at least 5 laws are passed in every parliamentary session, within 2 to 3 sessions per year in each member state. And every year, appropriation legislation provide for national budgets related to maybe gender ministries, departments, public schools, hospital enforcement measures to protect children, among others. I'm raising these because as advocates, we need to be familiar with the entry points of how we can begin to link up with government. We have 3 arms of government level, but members of parliament are the ones ultimately who this legislation has to pass through. Or as some say, the law must be passed by parliament, it mustn't pass through parliament. So this is a very important component for you to map out and include in your roadmaps. In addition, you'd find that most of these countries enact what we refer to as gender equality related laws. For instance, you will find in some acts of parliament, in some acts in your countries, Domestic Violence Act, you will find Equal Opportunity Acts, or laws, simply put, which compel parents to send children to school without discrimination. Some of them are related to child marriage and many more, and you can relate to what I'm referring to, among others. We, as a SADC Parliamentary Forum, see ourselves as enablers, where we develop these normative frameworks or model laws to ensure that members of parliament have a framework with which they can draw from. You will all appreciate that, unlike the executive, members of parliament do not have efficiencies around human resources. Most parliaments do not have dedicated staff who will function as legal drafters just to advise members of parliament. They don't have dedicated content developers who are dedicated to ensuring that when the law comes to parliament, members of parliament are able to know what to substitute and what to amend. But there's availability of researchers that are based on parliament, and we look upon other stakeholders, non-state actors like yourselves, to be able to work with members of parliament in this regard to ensure that when laws come through parliament, they are assisted. The SADC-PF developed model laws, like I've indicated, And these model laws are formulated following a very strong and rigorous consultative process with democratically elected SADC members of parliament. It is therefore underlined that this must be done for the people and by the people. Model laws that we develop are grounded on a strong evidence base with input from members of parliament, from other regional players like CSOs and experts in the field. They're also made from a staunch human rights perspective. So whatever it is that we do, that should be underlined. They're also based on norms and practices which are contained in generally accepted international instruments. For instance, the legal age of consent to marriage at 18 is contained in the Convention on the Rights of the Child and is also reflected in the SADC model law on child marriage. We have also just completed drafting the model law on gender-based violence. The same principles cut across. Our model laws act as catalysts for domestication of treaties and covenants, such as the ICCPR, the ICSRC, and the CRC. They contain similar norms and are further adapted in the context of our countries in Southern Africa and beyond. So how do we advance gender-responsive processes through the model laws? We influence processes in different ways. And if I were to look at some of our model laws, and I'll generalize at this point, we find that countries are able to reassess their gender norms when the forum monitors the SADC model laws. If there is a model law on gender-based violence and we follow through whatever means to say what has been done, it puts most of our parliaments and members of parliament, it speaks to their conscience in ensuring that they do reassess gender norms in their countries. The model laws also give additional momentum to incorporate best practice and reduce the domestication deficit concerning international norms on gender and child protection. The monitoring of the SADC model laws is conducted by regional, we have an organ called the Regional Parliamentary Model Laws Oversight Committee, and I invite all of you to be interested to attend its sittings as observers and also as experts witnesses. This organ or this committee is made out of chairpersons of all the standing committees of the forum, and they're dedicated to ensuring that where we have developed model laws, they monitor what has happened. Members of parliament at the SADC Parliamentary Forum level play a very central role in domestication and ensuring that they call government to account on gender programs, among others. So the model laws that we monitor in tandem with other gender advancement tools, such as the Gender Responsive Oversight Model, which we developed in collaboration with UNAFP and other structures, also becomes very critical as an enabling tool. So altogether, SADC model laws promote gender mainstreaming, gender responsive budgeting, and thus gender equality in our context. The experiences that we have had so far, and in this case, I'll refer to the model law on child marriage. We monitored this model law through a snapshot survey, which was sent out in 2018, and it's now been followed by a scorecard for domestication, which has just been adopted by the Committee on Human and Social Development and Special Programs, and will be channeled through the Oversight Committee for wider application. Some findings that we've made from a gender lens were such that gender equality, child protection is governed by different sets of laws instead of a single law. So you find that some people would come to the forum and say, why isn't that the model law has not been domesticated wholesale? The model law is not supposed to be taken on in that fashion. It is an enabler, and we find evidence in some of these acts that I've referred to. Many countries, we notice, also still allow for civil child marriages, but with a given legal administrative framework for authorization of parents by a judge or a minister. And we are very much aware that this is a clawback provision that would advocate for elimination as we continue. There's also very little information available for customary or traditional marriages, which occur in informal and rural settings. So the register that was recommended in the model law has not yet taken up fully, and this is an area for advocacy. We also realized that at that time, at least 3 SADC countries do not have a centralized register for marriages where liable data can be retrieved, and this is an area that we must look into and advocate for. Also, that for some countries, the offense is provided, but enforcement appears to be compliant-based only. These are key areas and findings that we would encourage all partners to assist us in advocacy and ensuring that we see through at the end of the day. So the SADC model law on GBV, as indicated earlier, has been prepared by the forum and partners and will go through a validation process. We've just begun a mapping exercise where all key stakeholders must be consulted, and I encourage you to guide us in this exercise so that we don't miss any critical stakeholders. This particular model law contains best practices relating to prevention of gender-based violence in our member states. In this model law, we define gender-based violence broadly to encompass economic and psychological violence, as well as stalking, harassment, among others. There's also a focus on concrete enforcement measures that can allow gender-based violence to be reported in confidentiality and without discrimination. It's also intended that the model law is going to be adopted at the Golden Jubilee of the Forum at its 50th Plenary Assembly session. Dates will be shared with you in due course. This SADC model law on GBV will thus change the landscape of GBV legislation across all SADC member states by providing for user-friendly single piece of legislation that can readily be domesticated by the executive. We are also working very closely with European parliamentarians, with ECOWAS, with YALA, and many other parliamentary centric organizations to ensure that we share this piece of good work for them to emulate or learn from in their countries. As I conclude, the SADC model law can be a game changer in spearheading modern, gender-responsive and anti-discriminatory legislation. Together, the SADC model law on GBV, the SADC model law on child marriages, the SADC model law on HIV and AIDS, we have another SADC model law on elections with guidelines for key populations that speak to upholding SRHR of different populations in the SADC region. Domestication relating to GBV will be a continuous process and requires consistency in advocacy at the parliamentary level, at the community level, through non-state actors and state actors. Partners are therefore requested to continue working with the forum to enable change in this gender-based violence legislation in the SADC member states, and we hope to fulfill the SDG 5. Thank you, colleagues. For more information on this, we work with the UNFP. Julie Diallo is available to also take in any calls, as UNFP is a co-chair in this particular process. I thank you, Mishi, and wish you fruitful deliberations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that powerful presentation, but also for telling us the process and the work ahead, and for inviting us to be part and parcel of this GBV model law. I think that's a critical information. I think for some of us, I would assume that not all of us knew about the model law. And as you've said, you invited us to ensure that all stakeholders are consulted and support the process as well. So thank you for the presentation. And in this point, now, before I welcome our next presenter to set the stage, I would also like to invite all participants to also engage in the conversation online. There are hashtags that have been shared on the chat, Together for SRHR, but also Let's Talk SRHR Ara and Act for Eco. So kindly use those hashtag as we share the insight we are getting from this conversation outside as well. So our next speaker will be Professor Rachel Jokins, and Professor Rachel Jokins will be joining us today to share again as part of the Setting the Stage. Professor Jokins is Executive Scientist for Research Strategy in the Office of the President of South African Medical Research Council, and is also honorary professor at University of Witwatersrand School of Public Health. She's also a member of WHO Expert Advisory Panel on Injury and Violence Prevention and Control. Professor, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you today about gender-based violence and what we have to do to end it by the year 2030. I hope you can all hear me and see my screen.
We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Excellent, thank you. So I want to start by summarising really what we know today about gender-based violence. And this slide I'm presenting you is the absolutely up-to-date summary of information on the prevalence of gender-based violence globally. It was developed by the World Health Organization and published as part of their report that came out just 3 months ago, concluding a systematic review of all the studies on prevalence across the world. And what we can see is that there are very substantial differences between the prevalence that we see in the north and the prevalence that we see in the south, and particularly sub-Saharan Africa. And where markedly is if we look at sub-Saharan Africa in this red circle in the middle of the continent, where we see that 20% of women on average across studies have reported experiencing physical and or sexual intimate partner violence in the past year. What's really notable is not so much the lifetime difference, because 33% of women had experienced it in the lifetime. And if you look at North America, the circles at the top, there 25% of women have reported it in their lifetime. But it's the fact that not only do 1/3 of women experience violence from their nearest and dearest, their intimate partner, husbands, boyfriends, but it is that this is something which is a repeated experience for many women. It's not a one-off experience. And this really shows the massive challenge that we have in terms of preventing violence experienced by women. Obviously, intimate partner violence is just one form of violence against women, and we need to recognise the enormous problem of rape by non-partners experienced by women across the continent. Huge problems of female genital mutilation, child marriage, other harmful traditional practices. And so intimate partner violence is just one part of this, but it is extremely common, with 1/3 of women experiencing it at some stage in their lifetime. And it's absolutely critical that we put the spotlight on prevention of intimate partner violence. The figure I've just shown you, of course, is a summary across all studies, all countries for which there is data. And in fact, the World Health Organization found that there is a prevalence survey providing data for most countries in the world now. But I think what I'm showing you in this slide is really critical, because what we need to recognize after understanding we've got a big problem is that the problem isn't evenly experienced by women across our communities. We have pockets of population within all our countries where the women experience much higher prevalence of intimate partner violence than in the general population. If you look at the graph on the left, that gives you columns from 4 different countries: South Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, These were population prevalence figures, and what they show is women's experience of past year physical or sexual intimate partner violence. And what we see on the extreme right is the figure South Africa has from the Demographic and Health Survey, which was 10% of women who'd experienced it in the past year. But research we've done in informal settlements in South Africa shows that the prevalence is much higher. And the column on the extreme left is from one informal settlement in the area around Durban in South Africa. But work we've done in other settlements confirms this. And we see a figure which is about 4 or 5 times higher than the national average. So it's incredibly important that we recognize that there are different populations experiencing much higher prevalence, and we need to prioritize the very poor, because in every country, they're most at risk of violence. On the right-hand side, I'll show you an analysis based on data from 7 countries, looking at the comparison between past year prevalence of intimate partner violence experienced by women who do and do not have disabilities. And what it shows is that women and girls with disabilities have twice the risk of intimate partner violence of those without. And this again reminds us that there are high-risk subgroups within the community, of which women with disabilities are one. So we need to think about the fact that this is an incredibly important problem, but as we go forward to target provision of care and support for women experiencing violence, as well as prevention, we need to remember the high-risk communities. At the present moment, our state of knowledge on drivers of gender-based violence has really been advanced to a very high level. What we understand is that gender-based violence overall is driven by structural factors, by gender inequality, a patriarchal privilege, disempowerment of women across our communities, by the normative use of violence in different aspects of social relations, and by poverty and low level of girls' education in particular. We know there are a set of individual and relationship factors that influence violence as well. Poor communication and conflict within relationships, poor mental health and substance abuse. And we know that girls who've experienced childhood abuse and trauma are much more likely to become victims later on, and boys who've experienced it much more likely to go on and perpetrate. We also know that intimate partner violence is driven by conflict and post-conflict, and in settings where this massive stress is imposed upon communities and there's a heightened normative use of violence, prevalence of intimate partner violence is higher. So what do we do about it? Well, the good news is that at the moment we have evaluated a large set of interventions, about 100 interventions, to try and prevent intimate partner violence in different populations, as well as peer violence at school. And we've shown that many of these interventions provide evidence of being effective and being able to show effect in programmatic timeframes. We, on this table, I'm summarizing types of interventions where 2 or more well-conducted studies have shown that they're effective. And what we see is we can make a big difference with economic interventions, whether economic transfers like a cash transfer, or combined economic and social empowerment programs targeting women. We know there are parenting programs that combine interventions to end child maltreatment with prevention of IPV that are effective. We know that community activism interventions rolled out in a systematic and well thought through and well resourced way across communities can shift harmful gender attitudes and roles and social norms to prevent violence. Well-designed school-based interventions delivered using participatory methods outside classroom time have been shown to be effective in preventing children perpetrating and experiencing violence, as have peer violence interventions. We know that couples interventions working on alcohol and substance abuse can be effective, as well as couples interventions that are approaching gender transformation within the intervention. And we know that special groups like female sex workers are at particularly high risk within our community, and collectivization empowerment interventions can reduce their risk of violence from clients, police, and strangers. And then there are a range of other interventions where their evidence is a bit weaker. And what's really important is there are things that we shouldn't be doing and investing in if we do them alone to prevent violence, because they don't work. And this includes our information-focused campaigns. In order for these to be effective, they must be combined with other intervention elements. We conducted through What Works a summary of this literature. And overall, as I say, it's shown we've got a repertoire of interventions that can be adapted for different settings and taken to scale. And the whole product is published in this report, which is available on the What Works website. But there's something else we learned that was critical, which is that even if you take a type of intervention that's been shown to be effective, not every attempt to use the intervention and evaluate it is actually shown to work. So we drilled down in What Works and found that there were 10 elements of the design and implementation of interventions that were associated with greater success. 6 of these were essential. Interventions had to be rigorously planned with a robust theory of change, rooted in local context. They had to address multiple drivers of violence. In highly patriarchal contexts, it worked better to work with families as well as working with women and men. And interventions did much better if they integrated support for survivors of violence. So it's not prevention or support, it's prevention and support. And then interventions need to be delivered with the right intensity, duration, frequency of sessions, length. They need to be delivered by well-trained and supported staff and volunteers who have the right attitudes. And then we found that in other settings where we were using these methods, vital to use well-developed manuals, participatory approaches, age-appropriate designs when we work with children, and to emphasize social empowerment as part of the behavior change, as well as building gender equity. And as part of What Works, we've developed a report on this as well, which is available from our website. So to conclude, what do we need to change to achieve Social Development Goal 5.2 by 2030? We need action. We know we can prevent gender-based violence in programmatic timeframes, so the challenge for us is to implement. We need to emphasize putting programs on the ground across our communities and countries to prevent GBV, and we need to focus on the areas of highest risk. We need to work smartly. We know that robustly designed and implemented interventions are essential for success, and we have this repertoire of interventions that have been shown to be effective. They can be adapted and taken to scale, and this must happen. We need to use our knowledge to guide our implementation. And we need resources and political commitment, because this is foundational for everything that we need to achieve. So I want to put forward a call to action. We must move forward to prevent violence against women and girls. We know what to do, we know how to do it, and now is the time for action if we are to achieve this change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for your presentation. It was sort of sad to hear the statistics that are coming out. But also it was important for you to share as well what has worked and what has not worked. And I think in so many ways, that's the spirit of having this dialogue. It's about time now that we do evidence-based advocacy that is informed by data and by research. And you have shared with us what works and what doesn't work. I think it's all up to us now to internalize this information, but also use it as we shape our program, our work and our support. Last, I would like now, so thank you very much, Professor. Last, I would like to invite our last speaker, and our last speaker today will be Emmy. Emmy Echeng. Emmy Echeng. Our last speaker will be Emmy Echeng. Emmy Echeng, she is a lawyer, passionate about gender equality, human rights, and social inclusion. She currently serves at Amnesty International as a human rights education and activism officer, and she has been in charge of supporting human rights defenders and established circles of consciousness across Kenya. Emmy, kindly, you have the floor, and if you will kindly keep it to strictly 10 minutes. Thank you, Emmy.
Thank you so much, Mishi. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
I can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So if you can put it in a presentation mode.
Okay, so Mishi, could you guide me on that?
So there should be at your right, at the right hand of your screen down, there should be an icon, which if you click it will just go on the screen mode.
Okay. That way. Yay.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So basically, I'm going to be speaking about the youth priorities and the role in advancing the action blueprints in GBV and bodily autonomy in East and Southern Africa. So I'll just begin with a small phrase, which is that patriarchal power is fragile and it resorts to violence against threats. Patriarchy has always used violence to silence women. Patriarchy has always used violence to control women's bodily autonomy. Patriarchy has continuously maintained structures through ensuring that women do not have a voice. So anytime any woman or girl stands up to threaten patriarchy, then it resorts to violence in order to maintain the status quo. So I'll begin with some data, which is that it's shocking that 736 million women have actually experienced violence, which is either intimate partner violence, non-partner violence, and some women have actually experienced both once in their lifetime. And 640 million women have experienced intimate partner violence. That is a very alarming statistic. In 2017, 87,000 women were intentionally killed, and more than half of these was intimate partners or family members. Fewer than 40% of these women actually look for help. So what happens to the 60%? The risk of child marriage in sub-Saharan Africa is so alarming, in that 1 out of 3 women aged between 20 to 24 years were married before the age of 18. And at least 200 million women and girls between the age of 15 to 49 have undergone female genital mutilation. 15 million adolescent girls globally between the age of 15 to 19 have also experienced forced sex, and only 1% have sought professional help. In South Africa, a woman is murdered every 3 hours. And it is estimated that 51% of South African women have experienced violence. As you can see, behind those statistics are lives, they're real stories, and I'm sure many of us are actually familiar with some of these cases. We have Pule, who was 8 months pregnant, and she was stabbed so many times by a person who was sent by her former partner, to kill her. We have Velvin from Kenya, who was raped, and as a result, she developed many complications and died. Lastly, we see the Chibok girls who were abducted by the Boko Haram. So this is just a representation of millions of girls across East and Southern Africa who continuously experience these forms of violence. So what are the root causes of GBV? The normative expectation of what femininity and masculinity is. And in most instances, femininity is seen to be quiet, submissive, while masculinity is seen to be aggressive. And this type of traits then perpetuate gender-based violence. We have normalization of GBV in private and public spheres. And my main concern is actually in the private sphere, where we have many unreported cases. And it is actually important to create an activist culture within our homes, because that's where women and girls are suffering in silence. We have the social, cultural norms and religious practices that inform our attitudes, that inform our beliefs, that inform even the systems that we have in place in government and in institutions. Economic disempowerment. Many women are in abusive marriages, abusive relationships because they do not have a fallback. Their question is, where do I go to? So this makes them to be more vulnerable to gender-based violence. Another fallback that has disappointed women is a lack of legal protection in terms of laws, policies, and the weak criminal justice system. And this justice system begins at the police, where women and girls are going to report these cases. And in this instance, there are many cosmetic gender desks where when women go to report or girls go to report, there's a lot of victim blaming, evidence is tampered with, and hence they cannot access justice. Also, underrepresentation of women in their diversity in leadership. We do not have these voices. We do not have sufficient voices. And even if we have the women in these positions, there's very little lobbying, because they don't, the lobbying power is very little. So therefore, the gender-based violence just continues to prevail. So we had a meeting in Abidjan and in Addis Ababa, where we were reviewing the Beijing +25. And in this instance, then youth within their diversity came together to say, what exactly is the issue right now? What are the priorities? And so they said that religious and traditional and social cultural norms still continue to perpetuate stigma and discrimination. The form of violence, there's new forms of violence, and it is persistent among young women, adolescent girls, and non-binary people. And as we have even seen, COVID-19 has been a trigger. It has been a trigger of gender-based violence, and it has, the rates are just alarming. And so some of the things that have fueled these forms of violence is radicalization, conservatism, militarization, and even the new form of violence right now is technology assisted. Then they also stated that the structural drivers of migration, displacement, human trafficking are also perpetuating inequalities and injustice. There's also unfulfilled need for comprehensive sexual education that addresses physical, mental, and social well-being. There's continued denial of the right to health, which includes bodily autonomy and integrity, access to information, safe and legal abortion, and even mental health. So what is the role of youth in advancing this, the blueprints on GBV and bodily autonomy? So just to put it there, that already youth are on the move. Youth are already in action. And as you can see, there are different ways in which the youth are promoting this particular blueprint in GBV and bodily autonomy. So we can see youth are using social media, where we had the total shutdown. We're seeing youth on the streets demonstrating, carrying out peaceful demonstrations, saying that they want an end to GBV. They want access to justice. We're also seeing youth also coming together in different places within their diversity with one unity of purpose, which is actually to end GBV and to promote bodily autonomy. So there's a photo there of youth in Addis Ababa who came together to review the Beijing Beijing Platform for Action. We also have youth who are also within the community, sensitizing the community on the need to end gender-based violence, the need to respect women's body. We also have, again, on the last photo, is the Voice for Choices and Rights Coalition from Namibia, who are carrying out a protest demanding for legalization of abortion. So youth are already on the move. Youth are already taking action. So what exactly is the call to action? Because it needs different stakeholders in order for us to actually actualize things. It needs youth to be supported in order to be able to ensure that GBV comes to an end and that bodily autonomy is respected. So the call to action is that we need, the government needs to
Amy, if
provide...
you could summarize and wrap it up.
Okay, sure.
Some few, top line call for action.
Okay, so basically for the government is to provide sexual reproductive health, to ensure that all forms of violence are addressed, domestication and ratification of all regional and global commitments holistically, and not just choosing certain clauses and removing others, and strengthening the gender machineries. And for the civil society and the intergovernmental institution, there's need for funding. Without funding, very few things can be done. And also training men who work on women and girl child rights on feminism. Also for the media and for the private sector to have policies that deal with sexual harassment, violence, and sexism. So as I conclude, at a personal level, and I believe also all of us within this webinar need to ensure that the march continues, that the march is moving forward until all women and girls in their diversity are free from all forms of violence and discrimination. I've concluded. Over to you, Mishi.
Thank you so much, Emmy. Thank you for sharing your powerful presentation. Specifically, I was really interested to hear the violence in online space, the violence that comes with the advancements of technology, because as much as technology has been an enabler, but also has been a platform on which violence has been perpetuated, and it has been used to violate, especially young people and the online spaces as well. So thank you very much for those insights, and thank you for sharing the declaration which was done in Abidjan and then formalized in Addis. I remember seeing you there. So thank you. And now allow me, I also really like to remind you on using the hashtag we have in the chat as well to connect to connect to the conversation in the outside world. This is the dialogue, and we want to reach as many people outside this room as possible. So kindly let's use the power of social media and the power of the network. Overall, I think we have a lot of comment, and I would like to invite all the presenters today to look at the comment, but also respond if need be. There are some of the questions, but overall, there have been appreciation from all the participants on how informative the presentation are, especially there have been comments on how insightful the presentation from Professor works, especially on what works and what doesn't work, because that it really informed, and it was sort of like a reflection and feedback to all of us who have been working on the sector now to know what works and what doesn't work. I also wish to convey to all of you that all the presentation will be shared to all the participants who have registered in this session. So that marks the end of our first session of setting the stage. But before I welcome you to the second section, I like to invite you to briefly take a poll. I hope the technical team is ready to administer the poll as we transit from this session to the next session. give you a minute. All right, so we're inviting all of you to kindly respond to the question on your screen. There will be 3 questions. So if you respond to the first question, respond then to the second question. And after you have done so, kindly respond to the third question and click submit. And as you do that, I wish to remind you on the use of the hashtag. Our hashtag today are Together for SRHR, Let's Talk SRHR, Act for Eco Generation Equality as well. We'll give it a minute before we close the poll, and then we'll share some response. And this is just to transition you from setting the stage now to the session where we can do the hard work, which brought all of us here. So a few seconds before we close the poll. Can we close the poll now? I hope we have significant number of people who have voted. If you can see the results. All right, 66%, 44% on the people in the room, they have said that the answer to the first question, which asks what is the prevalence rate for the physical violence and or sexual gender-based violence in the continent. 44% said 63, 29% said 45, while 26% said 25, and the correct answer is B. The prevalence rate is 45%. And the second question, we ask you if you know in 2000, according to the World Bank report, how many countries still did not criminalize marital rape. Majority of you think that is 65 countries, but the reality is 111 countries in the world has not yet criminalized marital rape. So the numbers are alarming, and I think that's a motivation for all of us to continue to do the work that we are doing. And last question, we ask you if we do not accelerate efforts to end female genital mutilation, how many girls will undergo FGM by 2030? And I think this is one question that we all got correct, and the number is 69. So thank you so much for participating in this poll. Thank you so much. And now, because we have at least get few questions correctly, you have earned your 5 minutes of break. And this 5 minutes of break will allow you to stretch, take a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, and when you come back, we will take you to the breakout groups. As you go to the breakout group, kindly be informed that breakout number 3 will have French translation, and breakout number 5 will have Portuguese translation. In event that you are placed in a group that doesn't have the language translation that you are conversant with, kindly return to the plenary, and technical team will assist you to assign you to the appropriate group translation. Your 5 minutes break start now, and in the top of the 5 minutes, kindly come back to your screen. You will receive invitation to join breakout group. And in the breakout room, you will meet your new facilitators and presenter for the breakout room. So kindly don't, please stay with us to the end of the session, more to come. So thank you so much. And the breakout start now. The break start now. Thank you.
have seen that young women face discrimination based on age as well as their gender. In spite of the challenges that we faced, especially with the COVID pandemic, I continue to intentionally create spaces for young women to be sharpened in their skills and for them to also have dialogues with those who have walked the journey before them. My advice to other young activists is, if they don't give us a seat at the table, let's bring our folding chairs, and also let's have research-based advocacy. I am Generation Equality Africa because I want to be part of the solution. We don't make progress by standing in the sidelines, whimpering and complaining, but by implementing ideas.
I'm every woman who has ever lived. I'm every daughter who is born from a girl. I'm every song that the sun dances to. I'm every wind that touches your face. I'm every beat, every sound, every rhythm my grandmother speaks of. I am every poem born, the pride in my mother's eyes. I'm every dream, every step, every story untold. I am plain tears, the melody of pain. And only that in you which is in me can know what I'm saying. Only that in you which exists in me can hear what I feel. And only that in you held in my mind can change what I am. Only that in you which fears the most can stop the dreams in me. And only that in you which laughs in sadness can teach my soul to smile. Only that in you which awakens me can fully be me.
We won't mention her dandruff. And, and then, in a
Hi to all. The rooms are open. If you haven't been assigned a room, just give us a minute. We'll assign you to a room shortly. And just please click on the join link just to join the link. And if you are a facilitator, please remember to record the group.
Thank you, David. We still have 84 people in the plenary. By this time, you will have received on the screen an invitation to join a specific breakout room. Kindly accept the invitation and you will be directly or redirected to the specific room that you assigned. So we'll be waiting to hear. We don't have anyone in the plenary. So kindly join the room. And if you have not received an invite yet, kindly let us know. David, it seems there's a number of people who have not received the link yet. So kindly share the link. I'm seeing you on the chat, quite a number who said, I have not been assigned room, I have not received an invite. So the technical team, if they can use the chat function as well to know who had not received the link, and for all the participants, kindly indicate on the chat so it's easy for the technical team to support you to get to the specific room as well. In the meantime, if we can get some music or video as participants are redirected to their room, and again, kindly use the chat to indicate if you have not received an invitation link to go to the specific room. So far, we have 72 people on the plenary. Yet. Thank you so much for letting us know that you have not been invited yet. Kindly indulge us with few minutes as we send invitation to all the participants. Thank you for indulgence. We have noted, Hilda, that you have not received the room. So as Cash, our team is working to ensure like everyone get the link to join specific room. For speakers, I'm just reading a message from the co-organizers, say for speakers and facilitators, if you accidentally have been assigned to a wrong room, please come back to the plenary and we will redirect you to the right room. And for the rest of the participant, just be patient a little bit. We are sharing, you will receive an invitation on your screen to join a specific room, and in the event that you are in the wrong room in terms of language, kindly as well come back to the plenary and we'll be happy to support you to get to the right room as well. All right, Kiambu, I saw you saying you have been directed to the wrong room. You are supposed to be in room 4 because of language. So that is
Sorry,
noted.
please allow me to step in. David, Jessica Gorham needs to be sent to room 5. Kiambi needs to be sent to room 2. Afni Amin needs to be sent to room.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
Let's start with Jessica because now we have so many. Which room is she in now?
She is here in the main room. Jessica is in the main room here, and she needs to be sent to room 5.
Well, she's not in the main room right now, meaning that
I just saw that she. No, she's still here.
Because I'm looking on the breakout room.
Her name is Jessica Gorham, GBV AOR.
Okay, she needs to be moved to 5.
5.
Okay. And then who's next?
Kiambi Jacqueline needs to be sent to room 2.
I think Kiambi is indicating in the chat.
Saying 4.
Oh, room 4. I'm sorry.
Room 4, please.
And Kidest 2.
Kiambi?
Room 4.
Kiambi and Kidest Hagels needs to go to room 4.
Okay. Okay.
Then Afni Amin needs to go to room 4 too.
Afni, which one are you in now? Which one was sent to you?
You send me to the humanitarian, but I think I'm supposed to be in room 4.
So I need to go to the humanitarian. So
no, she is here in the main room.
I'm in the main room. I'm in the main room. I came back. I just
but I need to know which one was sent to you. So you need to go to room 4. Perfect.
Yes, room 4. Thank
you.
All right. Then Sarah Chitambo was in room 4 and she needs to go to room 5.
Okay, I found Sarah, room 5. Next.
I see that Kiambi Jacqueline is still here in the main room and she needs to go to room 4.
Okay, which one was sent to you so that I can find which one was sent to you?
Room 3.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, so I must take you to 4, right?
Yes.
Perfect, done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we have Chantal Umehosa here as well. And if I'm not mistaken, she needs to go to room 3.
Chantal, which one were you sent to?
I had been sent to room 1, so I came back. I'm supposed to go to room 3.
Room 3, done. Okay, perfect.
And then the rest of the people that are still here can be assigned randomly to a room.
Okay, I'm doing that now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool.
And I will keep the plenary safe.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, Michi.
All right.
David?
Yes?
Can I then ask you to, Yvonne is still saying she's been assigned to room 4 and it keeps disconnecting her.
Yvonne, I'm in room 4. And then which one is she supposed to go to?
She can go to room 4 or any of the other rooms.
Yvonne is already in room 4.
Yeah, but
And
she says that they keep disconnecting her.
I don't understand. It must be her internet, maybe.
And also Wangeshi, I think she said on the chat that can you send to breakout room 2?
Wangeshi, which room are they in?
She says she's stuck. She's just stuck.
I need to know which room they're in so that I can.
I think she's in the plenary. She's not in the plenary?
No.
And
all the ones that are here, they haven't clicked on the link. That's why they still in the
okay.
room. So that's the problem.
David, can you give me co-hosting rights so I can check all the rooms to see if they're recording?
Perfect. Done.
And can you send Maria to room 4?
Maria, which group are you in now? You in 3? Can I take you to 4? Okay, please press join.
David?
Hello, Michi.
Oh.
Hello, Jess.
No, go ahead. So, McLean Kioma, you need to go to room 5, right?
Yes, thank you. I was lost in room 4.
Okay. David, can you assign McLean Kioma, who was sent to room 4, to room 5?
Please press join. It's done.
And I can only join breakout room 2.
Once you're in the group, you can move around, or which one should I take you to now?
I'd like to visit them all, so.
Yeah, once you get into one of the rooms, and then you'll be able to move around.
Okay, let me try.
Sorry, myself, I joined again. I had a problem of internet. I want to be maybe located in one room.
Which group would that be, or any group?
Any group, any group. Okay. I don't know how you proceed.
Okay, I'll put you in the humanitarian one. Please press join.
Thanks.
So Rhodes, oh, you left? She left?
Yes.
So how are we doing with the time? What time are you going to return them back, David?
I was hoping you would fill me in because we fell a little bit behind. Should I just wait for 11 minutes past 10 or 10 minutes past 11? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or around 20 past? I don't know. I was just hoping you would fill me in.
Oh, we are way. No. Are we past time, or am I using the wrong time?
I think before that we were like 10 minutes out, 10 or 15 minutes behind.
I'm just wondering. Which time am I using? So we still have like an hour or so, right?
We were given around 45 minutes for the groups.
That is correct.
Okay.
No, I'm just confused because the time in the timetable is South African time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what time are they getting back to the plenary?
Okay, let me quickly get it out. Give me a second. Here. So they should be back in the plenary at 11:25. So that's in
30 minutes.
All right.
Okay, and there is an issue with room 4, so I'll just, with the recording, so I'll go there now.
So David will just bring them across the room and then I'll take it from there, right?
Yes, correct.
In the meantime, I can take a break.
Just a quick one.
See? David?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're saying?
No, I was just saying you can take a quick break. It's okay.
Oh, I thought just a quick one. That is, you have a quick question.
No, it's okay.
All right.
Hello. Hello, David.
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, I still have not been assigned to any room. And the moment when I accept the room number, and then my internet disconnects. So I'm still not in any room.
Okay, which group can I take you to? Anyone?
The first one was room 4, and then the second room was room 5. Maybe I would just go to room 4.
Okay.
And
Sorry, you were saying?
I was struggling with my network. Then I'm not aware of what we are now set to do. And I'm not aware of my breakout.
Sorry, I'm lost. You were saying?
Just I was struggling with my network. Then I want to join any breakout.
Okay, I'm doing that right now. Please press join once it pops up.
Hello, I see we have almost 15 people in the plenary. Have you all not been assigned rooms? Can you kindly indicate that on the chat if you have any issues with being assigned rooms? Nope. All right.
babysitters will take care of them.
All right, welcome back to the plenary. I see we're already getting back to the plenary. If you allow us one more minute so others as well can join.
On est déjà revenu à la plénière. On accorde encore quelques minutes aux autres pour nous rejoindre.
Just to remind everyone, as you're coming back to the plenary, kindly choose the language of your preference as well.
Lorsque vous revenez à la plénière, choisissez votre langue préférée, encore une fois, pour obtenir l'interprétation.
And if technical team could just cross-check, I could hear French and English channel. If that will be sorted. So welcome everyone. Welcome to this, the last session of our dialogue today. I think we have almost everyone back to the plenary. So welcome and welcome again. And thank you for your active participation in the group work, in the breakout group. I had the privilege to go in some of the group when I could see how vibrant the conversation are. So thank you so much for being part of the conversation and for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, but also for sharing your views and how we can build better. And as I said, kindly make sure that you choose again the language of your choice. Kindly go to the world icon below your screen and you will be able to choose the language of your choice. We have this meeting is translated in English and French. And without further ado, first again, I would wish to apologize for the technical hitches that we had in the beginning of the session. I always say that this is one more reason for all of us Africans to invest in technology and innovation, and in specific, I think Action, Coalition, and Generation Equality is giving us that opportunity to commit. So I'm extending an invitation to all of you to influence your government, private sector, to recommit and have bold, game-changing commitment in action, coalition, technology, and innovation for gender equality, because we do need to have innovation and to use technology which has been created in the continent as well. So that being said, allow me now to welcome our facilitators. All of us have been divided in 5 groups, and for almost 5 minutes, we had an opportunity to hear from experts and advocates in specific topics and to allow us summarize the conversation. I know in any way we won't be able to do justice to the diversity and the richness of the conversation, but I'd like to encourage facilitators to use exactly 5 minutes to share with us the top line message that are coming from specific breakout group. And to start, we'll go with the breakout room number 1, and I would like to call Halima Zayed to share with us key issues that are coming up from the group number 1, which we're looking on the affected population. Halima, you have exactly 5 minutes.
Thank you, Michi. My rapporteur, Jill, will share the screen. So from our end, we discussed thematic focus area 1. Jill, if you could widen the screen, I would really appreciate. Just put it in the screen mode. Thank you. So we focused on the disproportionately affected populations. Next slide. So when we discussed on the need of girls and women-led organizations, some of the key issues that came from our group was more funding is needed for feminist organizations and participatory grant making and opportunities. Then there is need to acknowledge grassroots sexual gender-based violence organizations in key advocacy spaces and forums. Then there is also need to access safe spaces within the movement, the different movements, young feminist movements, women rights organizations. Then they need justice, continuous medical and psychosocial support. Then they also need to be included in key decision-making tables and also to engage directly with the policymakers. the need to access for learning and networking building for feminist organizations, and also lead primary interventions for prevention and services in their countries. Next. We discussed about how can regional networks contribute to greater investments. There was issue of radical systematic change, sharing of resources and network building, promoting intergenerational dialogues, design tools and generating resources, empowering female local and community leaders, and more convening of inclusive spaces, particularly to those who have none or limited access. We talked about opportunities to strengthen solidarity across the region. There is need for open opportunities to key advocacy spaces and forums to increase visibility and support regional campaigns, then acknowledge the influence of faith leaders and capacitate them on GBV issues, as well as conducting community level literacy on rights to access services, and having a survivor-centric approach that addresses their needs, and promoting gender equitable norms from early childhood through to multi-sectoral strategies. Other things that we need to know, some of the recommendations that came from the group are changing of discriminatory laws, for example, discriminatory of sex work, intention on supporting collective care like unpaid care work for women and girls, then rethinking donor expectations. For example, when it comes to reporting, the template should be very inclusive, address the needs of grassroots organizations as well. Then gender-based violence needs a multi-sectoral, multi-intersectional, and regional interventions. Then there's need to increase national level factors in the prevention and response of the gender-based violence, as well as increase interventions that broaden the access to economic resources and opportunities for feminist organizations. That's all we discussed from our group. If there's any other thing from my group members, they can be able to add, but I think I've been short and brief within the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Halima. Actually, you've been in 4 minutes, so thank you for giving us back our 1 minute. Thank you so much for sharing those inputs as well. But I do hope next time we will also consider Professor Rachel just said to us some of the key population as well as the extreme poor, but also people living with a disability, and we need to do more and strategize around those key population as well. Next group is the group that has been working on legislation. As we all know, the centrality of legislation. And I would like now to welcome Grace Wangeshi to share with us in 5 minutes. Grace, you have exactly 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mishi, and thank you to a very vibrant.
If you can just sort of like twist your camera so we can see you properly.
Sorry. Are you able to see me now? I don't know why I can't see this properly. Oh, this. Okay, how is that now?
That's better. Thank you.
That's better. Okay, thank you. Yes. Sorry. All right. So, Sunita, are you able to project? We had a very vibrant group, and I'll try to keep it short. Sunita, the co-facilitator, will also input should I miss out on anything. We started by looking at the key actions to support states to address discriminatory and contradictory laws. And some of the things we noted are challenges to do within legislation, the disconnects between laws, and of course, the huge issue of lack of women legislators in all the sectors, and therefore posing quite a big challenge. The need to learn from states that are taking already concrete measures to address legislation gaps. Examples of Kenya and South Africa have been provided. The need on legal literacy, including issues around service providers and their capacities, the need to invest in oversight roles, issues around inclusivity and investing in youth. We did note that the youth are not adequately covered by laws, and therefore that's an area of key concern. Issues around CSOs initiating change, and the very fact that they are very in tune with what is happening on the ground, that needs to be taken into consideration. need to support demand for accountability within communities. And there has been a very interesting conversation around the twin track of investments vis-a-vis accountability. Need to better link research on implementation of laws, restorative justice for all, including engagement of elders, community leaders to speak on law, especially on issues around FGM and ending FGM. And we did note on the very need to, for male engagement as key allies in this conversation, even within the law legislation. Promoting a system that is transformative, and again, a very interesting conversation, moving from mainstreaming to transformation. I think that's something we need to take into perspective. Then, of course, making it safe to report and protect witnesses and accountability of service providers. The next area, I think there was quite a bit on conversation around how to accelerate implementation. Training on use of evidence for actors, the whole issue of capacity building and enhancement. We did note that a couple of countries have issues on the gaps to access services and essential services, mainly on the whole issue of shelters. And the state really should be able to fund these from domestic funding, investments in public education and addressing data gap, the need for a dedicated budget and accountability. And this is where we are looking at countries being able to report back on what they have done and the execution of the legislative commitments. So it's not important, it's not good enough rather to put in place legislation, but you don't effect it. Then investments as part of political will and ownership. Full cost of GBV services have not been accounted for. We have examples that were given from Kenya, where gender desks are male dominated and issues like cost of training is not included. We saw the need for strengthening gender machineries as part of the investments to improve response and service delivery. And so those are some of the issues. On the question of GBV data gap, this is something we struggle with across the world. And I think it was experienced quite heavily during COVID-19. How do we, get into conclusive and very intense, assessment of data? Issues around intersectionality of data. Most of the times the data is not consistent. We have groups, vulnerable groups and unique groups that have not been, there's no adequate data. Persons living with disability, the LGBTQ community and other groups. And we learned of a good experience from Kenya where CSOs have come together and have set up a collective website where they're able to collect and post information. And that's a good example that could be taken forward. The issue of an online platform. So those are some of the conversations that we were able to experience. So thank you very much. Sunita, if there's anything I've left out, please do add. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wangeshi. I'm sure before even Sunita responded, I was sure you had left anything out. So thank you very much for the detailed presentation and for keeping time. So next, we had a group on bodily autonomy, and I would like now to invite Julie Diallo from UNFPA to do the report back. Julie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee, and also thanks a lot for the colleagues who really participate in that discussion. And so really, I will be really quick. There is like 4 points that we really discussed. The first one, it was really like that needs to unpack what body autonomy means, and so to have like a common understanding, so we can really like engage people where they are in relation to body autonomy and what it means. So this is something that comes out quite strongly. The second one is really the need of community engagement. So really like making sure that we engage at the community level to foster body autonomy, to foster access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. And with very concrete example from colleagues from Kenya, looking at how can we have intergenerational dialogue at community level to ensure that we have the perspective and that there is that kind of exchange between generations. Also, how do we do kind of like a cultural assessment, a cultural mapping to really develop like specific type of interventions to make sure that those interventions are culturally sensitive and response to what needs to happen in a specific community. We also spoke a lot about the need to reactivate, implement regional instruments, those existing progressive regional continental instruments. And so really like to re-engage with those at the regional level. But the last point is really like about the accountability. How do we make sure that at a national level and that we engage with member states to ensure that there is an implementation of regional instrument? And so we discuss a lot about the accountability framework and the need to map out what is beyond, what is like creating the implementation gap to identify what needs to happen at policy level, what needs to happen at financing and budgeting level. So really like to have that kind of like picture. And also we had like very good example, for example, of the Kenya on how after the ICPD, the Nairobi Summit and the ICPD commitment, there was kind of like a dialogue and a space created to look at how now we implement the commitment made by the Rwandese government, the government of Rwanda. And so this is also like kind of those good practices of how do you create those space with different actors to look at the accountability and what needs to happen. And in the case of Rwanda, a specific action plan was developed. So I stop here, Missy, and I hope it's in order with all my colleagues that were in the group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie, for the summary. Thank you for passionate presentation of that and giving at least giving us a taste of practical example that have been shared in the group work as well. So allow me now to welcome Kidesh from UN Women, who will share what was discussed in breakout number 4, looking at GBV integration and quality of services. Kidesh, you have the floor.
Thank you. Kiambi, can you project?
Sure, Kidesh.
And you have 5 minutes exactly.
Okay, so we discussed on what are the key actions for expansion of quality integrated GBV services, and the ideas that came up were integrating GBV into SRH services and vice versa, making it like a bilateral integration. The need for government involvement in addressing GBV, and the need to invest on GBV services as a strategy for sustainability by the government. The other is strengthening GBV response in the workplace, involvement of the media to address GBV. There is also a need for evaluation of interventions to ensure that there is a realization of expected GBV prevention and response services. And the need to rethink about referrals and linkages, that the assumption that women and girls want referral is not really right for everyone, and that there is a need to really evaluate that and work on that. Next slide, please. So some of the examples that have been used for financing of GBV services are establishment of parliamentary oversight committees. These parliamentary oversight committees are capacitated to enable them to effectively scrutinize policies and budgets to ensure that GBV and SRH are integrated. CSOs should take action to hold governments accountable on financing, and there is a need for more funding for CSOs to strengthen their actions. Women-led organizations and feminist movements are also the drive for advocacy, and they need budget allocation for GBV. Next slide, please. So what are the practices that can be promoted across the region? One is the women's shelters, a safe house that have integrated services and have linkage to the different services. There are experiences of training police officers, prosecutors, and community police on how to handle cases of GBV, and that has been found to be very effective. Training in the workplace and in development of safeguarding policies to inform processes of addressing sexual harassment. There is also feminist groups holding governments accountable in making sure there is effective implementation of integrated GBV services and funding for this. Another area that came up for discussion was that there was really very poor data in especially in intimate partner violence in the region, especially in East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kidesh, for keeping in time, but also thank you for sharing the summary of the conversation with us as well. So last, I would like to invite the last facilitator, Michelle Ebele, who will present the discussion on GBV in emergency. Michael, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Sarah Chitambo from UNFPA here in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'll be giving feedback on behalf of group number 5, while my co-facilitator is putting up the slide. I think I can just start with some notes that I made. So we were looking at what key actions we can take to ensure quality GBV services remain operational in emergencies. So very similar to the previous group, but we had a big focus on humanitarian crisis and emergencies. Is it possible to please make it bigger, Liz, to go into presentation mode if possible? If not, I'll just read on the side. So we said that we need to look at long-term funding that anticipates and makes contingencies for emergencies, so long-term funding for GBV. And we also looked at, because when natural disasters happen or when there's conflict, there is a lot of movement and transit that happens en masse with a big group of people. So we're looking at safe border models and creating and packaging services at facility, which can then be delivered to communities and leaders, such as condoms or self-injections, which are pre-packaged at facilities and then sent to these communities. And then looking also at building capacity of GBV caseworkers on clinical management of rape for hard to reach areas. For example, the example of Tigray, which is currently happening at the moment, was given. And then also community level engagements, establishing support groups, continuous messaging and awareness through community-based media, so very local media, going to the very local small agencies, small radio stations, small community newspapers that people are reading in very localized areas during conflict or natural disasters. Another action that we said was exploring innovative solutions to ensure the continuity of services. For example, toll-free lines to ensure the continuity of reporting GBV cases. So we know that during times of crisis, for example, right now during the pandemic, people are confined to their homes and movement is restricted. So access to toll-free lines that people can use intimately by themselves in order to reach the outside world from a confined space are really useful. And then on the next one, what are the regional actors? How can they mobilize greater investment in women's rights organizations? We're saying that women can establish support groups and innovative creative strategies to ensure that their livelihoods continue during times of humanitarian crisis. We can give women a platform to articulate their needs, their challenges, and their opportunity and give them opportunities, as well as facilitate that women's rights organizations have the ability to receive direct funding, and that this funding doesn't go through implementing partners, because we see a lot of mismanagement of these funds during times of crisis as well. The fourth action we had under there was providing livelihood support to GBV survivors through unconditional cash transfers. Okay, and then the last slide was, how can good practices in humanitarian contexts be expanded? So we're looking at ways in which online platforms that include a number of partners without incurring significant costs and without people being in physical contact. So how can we perpetuate people being able to access online platforms that give them information and that give them access to services without them having to incur a big cost for it. And also exploring innovative solutions to ensure the continuity of services, for example, mobile services, using bicycles for delivery of medication, provision of psychosocial support for GBV cases, as well as the use of telephonic and WhatsApp services. Also integrating and exploring the role of essential care workers. So how do we expand the services that those cadres of essential care workers are providing to people during humanitarian crisis, so that they cover a wider range of services. We also need the adaptation of services for different contexts, as well as providing psychosocial support and awareness to perpetrators through engagements on mass.
Sarah?
I think we might have lost her, but that was the end actually. So it's quite time.
All right. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Sarah, for presenting discussion in Group 5. And that will mark the end of group feedback and the presentation. And allow me, I think you will join me to thank all our facilitators for doing an exceptional work of capturing and presenting our thoughts. They done that in 5 minutes while we have discussion for almost 45 minutes. So thank you all facilitators who have taken up the challenge to summarize the depth and breadth of the conversation that you had in the breakout room in such a short time, but also giving us a sense of what exactly was discussed and what are the ideas that are coming out of the breakout discussions. So now we are almost the end of our conversation today, we have the first session, welcoming remark, and a lot have been shared, and then we had setting the stage session, and then we went to the breakout group session. So to just sum it all up and to give us sort of like a sense of next step, because we are not just here to talk and hear, but we want this should be a benchmark or a launch pad for the next action. So from this conversation, what should we do next? And to do that, allow me now to welcome 3 individuals who have committed and agreed to do this work. So first, I would like to welcome Julie to share with us what are the next step. And then from Julie, we went to Sunita, and from Sunita, we'll finish with Maureen. If you can do that in 3 minutes, I'll be the happiest person this morning. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, I take the challenge. Let's see. So first of all, really thank you very much for the great discussion. We just had the last 2 hours. And also thanks a lot for the panelists, the partner, the colleagues for sharing their experience, insight. It was amazing. So really, this is just the beginning. And so what are the next steps for that dialogue? The first one is that there is a series of next steps. The first one is that one of the results of this regional advocacy dialogue is that we will be using it to develop the regional strategy on sexual reproductive health and rights that is currently being developed under the joint program Together for SRHR. So this is the first element. And this is really we want that regional advocacy strategy to work with member states to push forward the achievement of SDG 5 and SDG 3 in East and Southern Africa. The second next step is that based on this regional advocacy dialogue, we will be developing like a series of advocacy briefs based on the discussion that you had in the different breakout room sessions. So these discussions were extremely rich, and now based on that, we really want to develop like a series of advocacy brief that we want to be validated by some of the key speakers of today's discussion, but also others. And we want to use those advocacy briefs to support advocacy at regional and continental level. The third step is that we will be using flagship programs in the region, such as the Together for SRHR program, but also, and I'm sure you're aware of the Spotlight Initiative Africa Regional Program, and also the Spotlight program that is being implemented in the continent, which is one of the largest program partnership between the European Union, the United Nations system, but also the African Union, where we accelerate effort to achieve SDG 5. So we will use the Regional Africa Spotlight program and the Together for SRHR program as platform to push forward the advocacy to end GBV and to advance sexual reproductive health and rights, engaging with regional body to have like policy dialogue on this. The fourth next step is that we are now in the second year of the review of the ICPD, the Nairobi Summit. And so we want to use the opportunity of the Generation Equality Forum, and especially the Generation Equality Forum, the summit in Paris at the end of the month that my colleagues from UN Women will speak, to leverage all those commitments made by ESA member states in relation to GBV, in relation to sexual reproductive health and rights. And so I will stop here because I know that Sunita from UN Women will really explain much more on the Generation Equality Forum. But my point is really, this is just the beginning. We are going to reach out to you again. And what I want to say is really thank you very much for all your participation and for taking the time to share your experience and expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. I have nothing to add on what you have said, so allow me to welcome now Sunita for the next steps.
Great, thank you so much, Mishi, and to all of our dialogue partners. I'm really pleased to be able to share some of the ways that we can continue these discussions, really building on what Julie has just shared as well. So we have a great opportunity first to really increase the momentum for ending gender-based violence using our virtual and, where possible, our in-person networks that we already have for gender equality. And we know that across the region and the continent, we really have various platforms and spaces where we connect and advocate and dialogue around the progress that we've been making, but also the challenges that continue to remain for gender equality. As Julie mentioned, the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative is one platform with programming dedicated to ending harmful practices as a key form of gender-based violence affecting women and girls across the continent. And just last week, the AU and UN Women, under the Spotlight, co-convened the first continental-wide learning platform for 8 countries implementing Spotlight across Africa: Liberia, Malawi, Mali, Mozambique, Niger, Nigeria, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. And this was an opportunity to share learning and good practices. This learning is ongoing because Spotlight, the implementation continues and currently has an investment through the end of 2022. So that's one platform. And then in 2.5 weeks, we will have another opportunity to take forward these discussions and some of the ideas that were generated during the breakout sessions to really forge stronger connections and really think about the actions that are needed as the next Generation Equality Forum takes place in Paris. So the forum is convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France, and is in partnership with youth and civil society. The session in Paris will be held from the 30th of June to the 2nd of July, and registration for virtual participation is open until the 27th of June. So I'll post the website in the chat box if you haven't already signed up. Forum, it follows 4 world conferences on women that have been organized by the UN, but unlike past conferences, the Generation Equality Forum has really come together through a co-designed process. And we can see, and maybe we just go back one slide, sorry, Kiambi. It's gone through a co-designed process with different points along the way to really build off the momentum that we're going to be seeing in the coming weeks. And the meeting in Paris will really kick off the blueprints, which will accelerate actions on commitments for women's rights, which are needed to really meet the vision of the 2030 agenda. So we see that the Generation Equality Forum is really a space for good practices and other efforts that are already ongoing to get greater attention and momentum, because it's bringing together individuals, organizations, public, private sector, and leadership from civil society, especially youth, because we recognize that's really critical, to really look at how do we create coalitions and accelerate progress for for gender equality. We'll be launching at Paris the Global Action Plan for Gender Equality, which covers priorities and progress across 6 action coalition areas that need to be implemented by 2026. And what we see in that, the action coalitions include one on gender-based violence and one on bodily autonomy and SRHR. And they're led by a group of diverse leaders. And so each blueprint has government, civil society, I think there's a slide before that, that we'll share, that really shows the diversity of leadership that already exists. And that's a roadmap of actions for the next 5 years. Each of those coalitions has a catalog of commitments that really set out concrete areas of focus, targets, and investments. And these link to financing, transforming gender norms, looking at legal and policy registry reform, education investments, data, accountability, intersectional discrimination, and how do we really focus on systemic change and address structural inequalities. So all of the elements that we've been discussing today will be taken forward as part of the discussion and also the blueprints. And for each coalition, there is an opportunity for organizations, and this is the slide here, governments and companies to really join as commitment makers to this global plan. So commitments can be financial, they can be advocacy support, policy, or programmatic, and they will be monitored on an annual basis through an accountability mechanism. We really encourage you to visit the forum website to learn more and look forward to continuing our conversation in Paris and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunita, for inviting us to Paris and to inviting us as well to make commitment in action coalition as well. So last, Maureen, if you would share briefly, like in 2 minutes, the next step before we invite Morris for closing this session. So Maureen.
Thank you, Mishi. I only have 2 minutes. So the next steps for FemNets will be that we will leverage the advocacy momentum and facilitate African women's exchange of ideas, information, and strategies prior to, during, and after Generation Equality Forum, and also during key moments for our members. So specifically during our upcoming programming conference and General Assembly that's being held in August from August 25th to 27th. And then we'll also continue to we'll also continue with the GBV advocacy dialogues, situating them within the ICPD process. Our third next step is to, of course, within our mandate, to continue to mobilize, engage, and connect African women and girls in all their diversity, including women rights and feminist organizations, in contextualized discussions on GBV advocacy with the aim of sharing innovative learning and on GBV. And we'll use various platforms, including our programs, like what we are doing currently in Spotlight. And then our fourth next step is we will continue to promote the SRHR dialogues across the African region with different SRHR actors and stakeholders as a strategy to advocate for development and implementation of progressive SRHR policies, and specifically for the implementation of the Maputo Protocol in Africa. And to keep the fire burning, we'll continue to engage in conversations with girls and young women through our social media activations, promoting hashtag SRHR dialogues, hashtag together for SRHR, and hashtag let's talk SRHR promotion.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for keeping it short and precise. And we have almost come the end of the of this dialogue today. And for me, as a moderator, I think some few things that I'm taking out of this session. One, I love the statement that we need to move from mainstreaming to transformation. I think that's really key and sort of like the challenge ahead of us. But also data, statistic, and facts, I think that cannot be overemphasized. And the third, invest, and invest. We need to put money and we need to put funds on it. So from moderator's desk, I would like to thank all of you for joining us for the past 3 hours. We have been sharing thoughts, ideas, experiences, and a practical suggestion on how we can eliminate gender-based violence in the continent, and specifically in the East and Southern Africa region. I don't know about you, but if I speak for myself, this session has been impactful at a personal level, but also it has shed a lot of light on how we can do our work better and how we can be impactful. That being said, allow me now to welcome Moise Dorate to give the closing remark, and he will have the last word. So this is goodbye for me. Thank you for having me, and welcome Moise to give a closing remark and close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mishi, and thank you for your capable moderation. Thanks to all participants. Greetings to excellencies, to representatives and partners from regional organizations, government institutions, civil society, feminist and women's rights movements, academia, embassies, development partners, and my dear UN colleagues. Indeed, it is a pleasure on behalf of UN Women and together with our partners, UNFPA and Femnet, to close this rich conversation and discussion, to make concluding remarks at the end of our very useful dialogue today. And of course, we all look forward to your participation at the Generation Equality Forum in Paris. We are grateful and appreciate the time and valuable contributions of each of you, our esteemed presenters, participants, and partners. We could not have had or reached the clarity of actions needed to drive the much needed acceleration to end gender-based violence. We could not have reached this clarity without you, your expertise, and your perspectives. Today's advocacy against gender-based violence and today's dialogue is a contribution building to the Generation Equality Forum later this month. And as was mentioned before, it will be held between 30th of June until 2nd of July. That event in Paris follows the launch of the forum in Mexico City last March. And we hope you will be able to register and join even virtually if you have not done so. There is still a window of opportunity to register so as to ensure your participation. It is particularly worth noting the value of having today's dialogue linked to two Generation Equality Action Coalitions. The first dedicated to addressing gender-based violence, and the other on bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and right, SRHR. The importance of this connection has been recognized by the Global Action Coalition leaders on gender-based violence. They include the government of Kenya and the Yes Trust Zimbabwe, and also by the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR, which include the government of Burkina Faso and the International Planned Parenthood Federation. In the past weeks, Action Coalition leaders of the GBV and of bodily autonomy have come together to set a shared commitment toward ending harmful practices, specifically female genital mutilation and child and forced marriages. Today's dialogue brings us closer to reaching even more partners to elaborate for such cross-action coalition commitments. The accelerating the momentum around the Generation Equality Forum in Africa and globally is a pivotal opportunity for accelerating the implementation of international commitments for gender equality agreed to more than a quarter of a century ago in Beijing. Such global commitments have been complemented by regional and national frameworks and commitment dedicated to addressing widespread pandemic of gender-based violence. Over the years, we have improved on gathering data, compiling, processing, and analyzing data. There are still many improvements to make, but we now have a better picture. Yet, this has not changed the bleak reality we know that shows us that the needle has not budged. Gender-based violence remains all too common and implementation all too slow. Dear dialogue partners, taking stock of the fast approaching targets on gender-based violence, including against harmful practices, as agreed in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in the Africa Agenda 2063, and the ICPD plus 25 Nairobi Summit commitments, as well as the reviews of the Beijing plus 25, we can all see, taking that stock, that our actions remain far behind our ambitions. So the Generation Equality Forum upcoming aims to transform this narrative by mobilizing governments, women's groups, feminist and youth-led organizations, along with international organizations and the private sector as co-creators and collaborators. The blueprints for action over the next 5 years provide a focused roadmap for accelerating progress as part of the current UN Decade of Action. The change that joins us together, that we aspire to and pursue, is only possible through multi-stakeholder partnerships. The reflections from the 5 thematic sessions today highlight how to bring about the needed change. We must continue expanding the voices in our spaces of dialogue and actively promote feminist leadership as part of accountable governance. We must revisit and remain alert to how power and control are wielded, and we must ensure that women and girls enjoy the right to have power and control over their body and their lives. So now, as we close today's important dialogue, I invite you, each of you, to consider continuing the conversation by registering for the Generation Equality Forum scheduled to be held in Paris later, noting the details of registration that were shared earlier today. I would also like to encourage you to explore what it would mean for your organization or institution or community to join as one of the 500 plus commitment makers on the Action Coalition, noting that nearly 200 are from our continent in Africa, because we are stronger when we come together. Finally, we appreciate and value your continued cooperation and collaboration as we develop the policy briefs based on today's discussions and continue to dialogue in our shared platforms for advocacy across the region. UN Women stands together with all of you here today as we step forward in our collective journey toward generation equality. We'll continue to reconvene spaces for dialogue, advocacy, and action, whether through the European Union and UN Joint Spotlight Initiative Africa program, and with our UN agencies such as UNFPA and partners such as FEMNET, or via other regional and continental frameworks. Thank you for your commitment, your collaboration, and most important, your courage to bring about change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Moores, for those powerful closing remarks. I don't want to add any additional word, not to dilute what you have said, but allow me to thank our interpreters who have done an amazing job to make sure all of us could understand each other, but also the technical team who have been on the background doing all the technical stuff. So thank you so much. And importantly, thank you to all of you who have made this space safe. We are speaking here about GBV. Online violence is also a reality facing most women and girls in the continent. So thank you for having this place at the safest place for all of us to engage respectfully and happily and decently. So thank you so much. And this will mark the end of this dialogue. Thank you and welcome. Enjoy your afternoon, evening, and morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.